Welcome into another edition of Division Two Baseball, the podcast here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, however you're hearing us, however you're finding us on our website at diviibaseball.com and on our social media platforms at DIVII Baseball. We're really excited because the season starts in just a couple weeks, and we have come up with our preseason top 25. Who's we? Well, it's Robert Fry and myself, Will Connerly. We are happy to be with you talking about Division II baseball in anticipation for the 2025 season, Robert. So today we're unveiling our preseason top 25, creating some buzz before the season with who we think will be the top 25 teams and also some of the other teams that we considered here for this season. We'll be breaking these teams down, telling you a little bit of the who, what, where, when, and why around these teams we believe at this current moment are the top 25 and beyond in the country right now, Robert.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this became very hard. I mean, for our Patreon subscribers, right? You saw the top 50. We boiled it down to top 40. I personally thought going from 50 to 40 was incredibly difficult. Now it's even more difficult going from 40 to 25. But we felt like these were the best 25 teams to start off the season, and we'll go and explain, how they did last year, kind of who's coming back, some impact players that are coming back. But nonetheless, like all 40 of these teams that we have in the top 25 and receiving votes category, again, have some say for the top 25, and it should be shaping up for a great 2025 Division II baseball season. But without further ado, we will get started with our top 25. Coming in at number 25 from the GNAC, none other than Northwest Nazarene.
Yes, the Nighthawks. They're getting a good look, and they had a great season last year. They were toward the top of the GNAC all year long and dominated in one of the smallest leagues in Division II baseball, just with 5 teams. But they really set themselves apart, and they were really proving to be a force within the West region. And we expect a lot out of this group coming into this season.
Absolutely. A team that went 36-15-1 last year, 23-9 in the GNAC. They won the regular season tournament, or the regular season title. They won the conference title. They made a regional appearance in the West region. And they're bringing back roughly, 2/3 of their team, especially more on the pitching side of 70% and offense 64%. Some key names are Carter Walsh, who hit 321. Gavin Brubaker hit 317. On the pitching side, you have a two-way threat in Kaylor Saunders. He threw the most innings last year, 62 innings with a 4.5 ERA. Jonathan Zayas had a 5.8 ERA, but you expect him to get a little bit better, especially on the bullpen too. Wade Duncan, a 2.41 ERA, and only walked 2% of batters in 21 appearances. But also on the flip side with impact transfers, shout out to PNW CBR for that great team preview on Northwest Nazarene, by the way. But we got to talk about a guy by the name of Nin Burns II, a transfer from Texas Southern, the D1 SWAC program. And he played at Cal Poly Pomona in 2023. But at Texas Southern, he hit 376 with an OPS over 1,000, 6 home runs, and 45 RBI. Only 8 stolen bases. But with Pomona, he went 20 for 20 in stolen base attempts in 2023. So you think with Joe Schaefer in that new program, does he get back in the base stealing pass? And then on the pitching side, you have a very impact arm from the junior college ranks from Umpqua Community College, and that's Landon Parker. Last year, all in relief appearances, he went 30 1/3 innings, and he had a 1.19 ERA. So definitely another guy that will make a big impact for the Nighthawks.
Absolutely. They bring back so much pitching, 70%, like you mentioned, on the returning production side. And 2 guys who made 10-plus starts. And I think Kaylor Sanders is going to be one of the best arms in the league. And like you said, they bring back a couple of big arms on the mound. Carter Walsh, a super utility man as well. So it's going to be fun to see what this group can do and how they can follow up a season where they won 36 games and looking to try to crack into the West Regional again with a little bit of a wrinkle. They're not going to automatically get there if they win the conference tournament championship. GNAC no longer with an auto bid. However, Northwest Nazarene's still going to be a force to be reckoned with out in the West region.
Yeah, that's right. And speaking of West, we go to number 24, not necessarily the West region, but West Texas A&M from the Lone Star Conference. What an impressive season that they had back in 2024, especially with now they have a new head coach. Matt Vanderberg left for D1 Stephen F. Austin, but it's a familiar coach as their pitching coach, Corey Hall, stepped up. But Will, give a little bit of background on West Texas A&M.
Yes, West Texas A&M, they really got things going last season. The program was starting to make trends toward the right direction the last few years, but last year it culminated winning 37 ball games. They get to the South Central Regional, and they were right toward the top in the Lone Star Conference with Angelo and Lubbock Christian pretty much the entire year. It came down to the final weekend, and this lineup may be the most experienced in the Lone Star Conference this year. So many seniors that have a ton of at-bats. They bring back 5 different guys with over 200 plate appearances from last year. Ryan Camacho, Kyle Mikolas, Corey Schmidt, Dylan Fesperman, all of these guys hitting well north of 300 as well from last season. So they have so much experience. They will have to replace a couple of weekend starters. However, they definitely can do damage in the Lone Star Conference with all the experience they have coming back. And that's what it takes with those 4-game weekends in the LSC. So this is certainly a group to look at. And a big reason why we have them number 24 is because over 77% of their offense is returning to a group that tore the cover off the baseball last year.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you think about it. Ryan Camacho, Dylan Fesperman, as you mentioned, Corey Schmidt, Kyle Mikolas, all guys who hit above 350. Corey Schmidt hit 394, Fesperman 383, Kyle Mikolas 409. A lot of offensive pop in a league that is very offensive. And so it creates that opportunity that we think that West Texas A&M is deserving of this ranking, and their offense will continue to play. And now they're losing quite a bit on the pitching side, as Will mentioned. We're only getting about 35% back, but they did get in the transfer portal 2 impact relievers to hopefully stymie that back end, as they got Michael Guerrero, a transfer from Division I Nicholls State, who had a 2 ERA over 18 innings for him last year, and Gabe Torres out of a D3 powerhouse in Marietta, who went 5-2 out of 22 relief appearances, 40 and a third innings, and he had a 2.90 ERA. So Corey Hall has definitely his work cut out for him with a different staff, but that Lone Star League is an offensive league, and we'll see what Corey Hall does in year 1 with West Texas A&M, as now go from 24 to 23, and now we're going from West Texas A&M over east, and we'll go east into Seton Hill at number 23.
Yeah, Seton Hill was a force to be reckoned with last year. 41 ball games won in one of the more intriguing leagues to watch, the PSAC over there in the West. They were the top team in the regular season in the PSAC West. They go to the Super Regionals last season, and they get a lot of offense back. It starts with Owen and Max Mandler. Both of those guys were so impressive, and the 2 guys, both Mandlers, the brothers, they really mashed. Both hit above 300, and they are back in action. Christian Zilli returns on the mound along with John McCullough as well, so they get a lot of production back on the mound. They do lose quite a bit as well, obviously, with that 1-2 punch that was one of the best in the nation with Aiden Layton and Brandon Berger. However, still expect this Griffins team to be very, very impressive because of what they can bring back offensively and just how this team has developed arms and developed pitchers throughout the years. They're just going to continue to reload with this team.
Absolutely. We think that the PSAC is going to be one of the loaded, if not most the loaded front end of the conferences. You see how many teams were at the top, especially, last year, and how well they did. Seton Hill and IUP, Millersville, and so on and so forth. East Stroudsburg, Westchester, you name it. There's a lot of talent there. We think Seton Hill coming off that super regional appearance again. You mentioned the Mandlers, and they have John McCullough as their main returner, and then Christian Zilli, Evan Rossi, excuse me, Ian Korn out of the bullpen, who had a 1.72 ERA and 15 and 2/3. But in terms of replacing Aiden Layton and Brandon Berger, well, you go to the portal and you get a guy by the name of Julian Manaya, who was a second team all conference member of the MEC with Glenville State, who went 7-2 over 55 and 2/3 innings. He had 79 strikeouts. Now, the walks were a bit of an issue, he had 48, but very good pitching coach there at Seton Hill with Clay Martin. I know he'll do a great job in developing and maybe working down those walks, but having a guy who was, again, a second team all conference member in Division II baseball will also look to alleviate that replacement of a draft pick in Aiden Layton and another guy in Brandon Burgert. As now we transition from one team in the PSAC to another team in the PSAC. That's right, number 22. We have the Millersville Marauders.
Millersville's been so consistent getting to regionals left and right. They did it again last season, winning 38 ball games. And as you talk about the duo of Layton and Berger, I think that Millersville would have something to say. One of the most fantastic 1-2 punches in the country last year, bar none, was Carson Kalina and Alex Mycutt. So the question for Millersville will be, how will they replace those two starting pitchers who ate up so many innings for this group? And Alex Mycutt, sub-2 ERA, Carson Kalina, they both were nasty. So obviously, that is probably when people see this and you follow D2 baseball for a while, you think, wow, Millersville 22, because you're typically used to seeing them a little bit higher. But the question mark there is on the pitching side. They do get Connor Cook back, though. He's expected to be one of the best pitchers in the PSAC. And then it's always nice to return the guy who led the nation in stolen bases. Jeff Sabater had 57 of them a year ago, and he's back for the speedy Millersville team that returns 64% of their offense from last season.
Yeah, a team that went 38-16 in their season, 23-9 in the PSAC, appearance in the Atlantic Regional. You bring back Saber, you bring back a power bat in Matthew Williams. Another power bat in Jimmy Kirk, only had 95 plate appearances, but a 5.68 slugging. Connor Cook, Evan Rochelle with a 2.57 ERA out of the bullpen. You expect him to be a key cog, but a lot to be seen again with John Sheehan's program, but a lot of positives there as well. We're forgetting about Sam Morris, who hit 347 last year for the Marauders. But on the transfer side, they did go to another Division II school in the Sunshine State Conference in Barry and pulled Joe Morrissey, who had a 3.89 ERA for the Buccaneers of Barry, over 76 in the third inning. So he'll look to be a key replacement for that 1-2 punch, like you mentioned, with Kalina and Mycutt. And then another guy that's expected to be pitching again this year is Matt Siebert, who pitched in 2023 with Millersville. He had 32 2/3 innings, 11 games, 5 games started with a 2.76 ERA. Didn't pitch at all last year, but is looking to make that way back on the mound here in 2025. Millersville at number 22. So now we go to the number 21 team, and we're going out west, and we're going to the Cal State Monterey Bay Otters, a team that made the Super Regional last year. Will, kick us off.
Well, Monterey Bay, they've really started to develop into a powerhouse in Division II baseball. They had a great season last year, and they've put together a couple of really good seasons. They win the regular season title in the CCAA and the tournament championship, which was a thriller last year, and they go to the West Super Regionals. Obviously, it's so tough because people from one side always feel like you're going to go up against Point Loma on the other end of the equation. However, for this Monterey Bay group, they get a lot back. They get a ton of pitching back. They get some key cogs, KW Kalichi and Jaden Shepard, both back for this team. They were so good last year. Both hit about 350, and they both had double-digit home runs. So those are going to be the two key cogs in this lineup coming back. And then Nate Rolacek back on the mound for a group for Monterey Bay that returns about 80% of their pitching staff and a couple of key pieces on the starting side. So this is a group to really, really get excited about. Chase Lindeman and JJ Ingman do happen to be big losses for this team offensively, but they have a lot to like over in Monterey Bay.
You got that right, Will, and there's a lot of opportunity for pitching-wise. Aiden Lee, another guy who threw 41 and a third innings and struck out nearly 1/3 of every batter he faced. Ryan Eo out of the bullpen, a 1.69 ERA as well. A lot of pitching, and pitching will always play here at the Division II level. But yeah, you bring back Quilici, Shepard, Murchison, three guys, right around Sergio Solis, right around 350, creates an offensive opportunity, and Walt White will do a great job. And some of these guys who maybe played really well at a junior college or another place, didn't get that much at bats or plate appearances, but you'll see them rise in the next level. As one guy that got to Monterey Bay from a junior college is Cale Good, a infielder from Folsom Lake College who hit 321 with a 519 OBP there at the junior college level. So he looks to maybe replace, if you will, the definitely the big bat of Nico Hartojo there in the middle of the infield. But either way, this is shaping up to be a very good baseball team, especially not just in the CCA in the West region, but in all of Division II baseball. Is now the number 20 team. We go into the Midwest, and we go to the great state of Ohio, and we rank the Ashland Eagles at number 20.
The Ashland's put together really good seasons left and right over the last few years. John Challey's group's always so competitive within the Midwest region, and they're continuing to get better and better and better, and they return so much from a team that won 42 games last year. All in all, 78% of their team is back, and they get a guy back on their team who was there 2 years ago, who was the conference pitcher of the year in the GMAC. So they win the regular season last year, go to the Midwest Regional, 42 wins, and again, 78% of your team back. Cam Miller back in action. Gavin Dobbles, Jeremiah Cangelosi, Chris Franks, Colin Overholt, all these guys that are starters for this team in the lineup. You can pencil them in again in 2025. Marshall Leishman and Cam Scott and John Essig, who throws really hard. All those guys back in action on the mound as well. So they did not lose a ton from a team that won 42 ball games, and they expect to be one of the favorites in the Midwest region this year.
They certainly do, and it's hard to beat a team when, again, you're returning everybody. But like you mentioned, you return Brendan Beaver, too, who was the GMAC Pitcher of the Year in 2023 with a 1.96 ERA over 91 and 2/3 innings. He did go to Missouri State last year, and now he's back with the Eagles. Not to mention another guy who's an impact bat from the transfer area, a junior college transfer from McHenry Community College, and that's Noah Goddard, catcher first baseman, who hit 392 a season ago. So another impact bat on offense, and definitely someone who can bring back, the amount of talent that Ashland has, and definitely, like you said, Will, a team that will be reckoned with there in the Midwest region. As now, when we go from 20, now we go to number 19, and the number 19 team in the country, that's East Stroudsburg.
And dipping right back into the PSAC, they were the team that was at the top of the PSAC East at the end of last year's regular season, perhaps the most difficult conference to win in all of Division II baseball with how loaded it is in the PSAC East in particular. They host an Atlantic Regional. They win 43 games from a season ago, and they do get some quality guys back. Now, they had some big losses as well, and it was interesting for a while to see how East Stroudsburg, who had one of their best seasons in their program's history last year, what they could do here coming into 2025, but really think that they did something special a season ago, and they're continuing to build on that here this season.
Right, and like the rest of the PSAC that we mentioned so far, they're going to have to replace one of their top arms in Brent Francisco from a year ago. But some guys that are coming back, like Ryan DeWeese, who went 7-0 with a 3.52 ERA, or Caden Park out of the bullpen, who had a 2.25 ERA. But you also bring back offensively Jack Rothenhausler, who hit 3.39, and then Shanley Wall, who hit 4.01. But I think a big key piece for East Stroudsburg this season, so they went in the transfer portal and they got Valdosta State's best hitter, and that's Dennis Pierce, who hit 380, a guy who was a first team All-South region selection from a year ago, first team All-Gulf South selection as well. As a lot of guys, this team is looking really good, and you bring back an impact bat, which may be the difference from being, a good team versus a great team, especially like we mentioned before in the gauntlet of the PSAC, as now we go from number 19 to number 18, and we go to the Great American Conference, a team that really drove up on the rise towards the end of the season, got to a super regional there in the central region, and that is Arkansas Monticello.
Oh, yes, Arkansas Monticello. We're both really high on this team, and they come into this year, they win the GAC tournament. They go to the super regionals in a tough central region. Over 80% of their offense is back, and some guys that just had some clutch appearances for this team down the stretch at the plate. Chaz Poppy, Camden Tanner, just a sophomore, but already one of the best players in all of Division II baseball, Kirk Wolf. And then they get Connor Irvine back. They get Nelson Mercado back, who's one of the better back-end arms in the country. This is a really good ball club.
Absolutely, it is. Will, I mean, this offense, we were going through this and we're like, you know what? Actually, Arkansas Monticello is kind of surprising us with what they're returning and kind of impact players that they're bringing back. Dylan Vale's another guy we expect to take a step up from 2023. He had a 5 ERA. But again, Mercado, you still have your ace and Connor Irvine. It's all about replacing Charles Peacock in the rotation, but you essentially bring back your entire offense. I mean, you have 7 guys with 200 plus plate appearances returning. So that experience will go a long way. And speaking of going a long way, you bring in a junior college transfer to help continue bolster your offense from Redlands Community College, and that's Ryan Sessions, who hit 359 with 11 doubles, 5 home runs, and 29 driven in for the Redlands there last year, and he'll look to be an impact back here for the Bull Weevils. As a season ago, 35-24, 23-10 in the conference. They had a 3-way tie for the regular season, won the conference tournament, but man, they went on a tear in the postseason, and we feel like they're going to be riding that into the regular season, as we now go from one team in the Central Region to a team that the Arkansas Monticello beat in the Central Regional, but a team that did very well last year, and that's the Missouri Southern Lions.
Yeah, Missouri Southern, they had a really good year last year. I mean, they were toward the top 10 from our perspective most of the year. They were neck and neck with Central Missouri in the MIAA a lot last year, and it was interesting to see what they were ultimately going to be able to do, and they end up snapping what was that impressive streak of MIAA conference tournament championships that Central Missouri had. They won the MIAA tournament, get to host in the Central Regional, ultimately bow out to a Monticello team that, like we just talked about, that has a guy who hit 4 a 450 almost as a freshman. But for this Missouri Southern team, big reason why we have them so high. It starts and ends with Cole Gaiman. Their ace from last year is back, and he threw 100 innings last year, had a 2.25 ERA. He's really good. And then they get a couple of guys who you're going to be talking about a lot offensively. Drew Townsend, Will Doherty. They're both so good at the plate for this Lions team. And so you get two key bats back, and then you also get Cole Gaiman, who's one of the best pitchers in the country.
And you also think back from 2023, the level of play that Nate Muskowski had for the Lions. You think back of Tragan Parker, what he did. We think they had a bit of a down year last year hitting under 300, but we think they're going to hit well above 300 this year as a key piece to that offense. Sure, you lose guys like Henry Kuziak and Garrett Rice offensively, but you still bring back your top two stars and Cole Gaiman and Trent Harris as well. And when you have Cole Gaiman, you have a chance 1 out of every 3 days. But in terms of kind of impact guys transfer-wise, we can go to a Division III school, who's actually now an NAIA school, College of the Ozarks. Grab infielder Jake Leaker, who hit 351 there a season ago, as well as you get Casey Stalzer, who fans of MIAA may know he was a Northwest Missouri State pitcher. ERA in the 6, but he was 6-3 last year, over 72 2/3 innings, and had 99 strikeouts there in just 72 2/3 innings. He's definitely going to be a guy that will be slotted into that rotation for Bryce Darnell as they look to repeat on their MIAA tournament champions. And I'm sure their all other goal is to become the MIAA regular season champions, 44-15 last year. Who's to say they don't have a chance there as well? So now we go from number 17 to the number 16 team in the country. We're going back to the Lone Star, and we're going to a team who had such an impressive year, a team that, we thought Angelo State was going to just run the table a year ago. Well, then here comes Lubbock Christian, and they're our number 16 team to start the season.
Yeah, Lubbock Christian really impressed last year. Like we mentioned earlier when we talked about West Texas A&M, they were pretty much a 3-horse race for the top of the Lone Star Conference with Lubbock, West Texas A&M, and Angelo. And for Lubbock Christian, a good thing for them is they get back some huge guys offensively. Now, overall, they did obviously lose one of the best players their program's ever seen in Carson Ogilvie, and just really a historic level of a D2 player. However, Brevin McCool's back. He's an early candidate to be an All-American. Shea Bowen and the Jacob Gutierrez also back, who hit 424 for this team. Ryan Marquardt back on the mound. So this team did lose a lot. I mean, all in all, 37% of their team is back, so over half gone, but 45 wins from a year ago. They have some momentum coming into 2025.
Absolutely. Hosted that South Central Super Regional with Angelo State. They're regular season and tournament champions in the Lone Star. 35-13 there in the Lone Star Conference. That's pretty darn impressive. And speaking of pretty darn impressive, they continue on with their accolades in the transfer portal as they grab first-team All-OVC player Nico Baumbach Nicholas Baumbach from Arkansas Little Rock, who hit 338 there in the OVC, 8 home runs, 51 driven in. And then you also, not say you're going to completely replace Carson Ogilvie, but defensively, you bring a guy from UTRGV and Cade York, who was a all-defensive second team in the WAC. Also, he hit 282. Had an OBP of 408, but him transferring now to the Lone Star Conference, you expect those numbers to go up a little bit in that offensive league. But 2 impact bats to help the team get to maybe the level that they were last year. As now, speaking of teams getting to that level that they were last year, a team that had such an impressive season in the Conference Carolinas, that's Young Harris.
They certainly did. Young Harris was such a fun team to watch all of last season, and they're going to be a lot of fun once again. Conference Carolinas had so many teams within the top 25, and for Young Harris, winning 41 ball games last year, they made it into the Southeast Regional, which in its own right is a huge accomplishment with how difficult that region is. And they get 58% of their offense back, and they get a lot of size back with the 6'8 Jeremy Begora. Hit 370 last year with 14 home runs, and he's right back in the smack dab middle of this young Harris order. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch for this team.
Absolutely. Also, Jack Enrico, 180 plate appearances and OPS over 1,200, averaged 390 at the plate. He'll be a key piece. Cade Smallwood, in just 121 plate appearances, hit 340. A lot of quality offense to bring in. Now you're going to have to replace Zach Murray and Dylan Beck, but you have Zach Hart coming back. You have Ryan Cross coming back. Two guys with an ERA around 4 that threw over 60 innings. You expect them to throw more. Ryan Heischman, who had 38 and a third innings and a 3.76 ERA. You expect him to perform as well. And some other guys that they grabbed, like a guy by the name of Graham Edwards, a transfer out of the bullpen from Liberty. Didn't have quite the season he wanted last year, but in 2023, over 24 and 2/3 innings, he had a 3.28 ERA for Liberty in the ASUN. So that's a positive place. And then another positive is you go to the transfer and you grab a team or a pitcher from Tampa, the defending national champions, and that's Drew Howard, who had a 3.45 ERA in 15 and 2/3 innings. So two guys that we'll expect to bolster that young Harris bullpen coming into 2025. And now we go within the Southeast region. Again, that gauntlet, we go to from number 15 to now the number 14 team, a team that really surprised us towards the end. And then when we're looking at their roster and who they're bringing in, we're like, they might make some noise, and especially since who they open up the season against, and that's Georgia College and State University.
Yeah, Georgia College, I mean, they do get a lot back, especially on the mound. And they had such a fun year last year, 37 and 22, and they win the Peach Belt Tournament Championship, and they go to the Southeast Super Regional. So they're coming off a year where they did some really good things, and maybe those things weren't expected until the end of the season when they went on that great run. And Matthew Mebane hits a walk-off grand slam to win the Peach Belt title. Guess what? He's back after hitting 20 home runs. Over 64% of their offense is back, and they get back a frontline starter, certainly going to be one of the best arms in the Peach Belt, and that's John Luke Glanton, who had nearly 120 innings pitched last year and an ERA just an eyelash above 3. He was really good.
He was really good. Nobody threw more innings than John Luke Glanton did a year ago with nearly 120 innings. You also bring back Bradley Wilson as a number 2 guy, and then Lex Kenny, who was kind of a swingman for him. He had 22 appearances, 2 starts, 58 innings, a 4.34 ERA. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Belcher does with the Bobcats there. And they also bring in a guy from their same conference. That's Carson Phillips at USC Beaufort, an outfielder over. He had 217 career plate appearances in the last 2 seasons with USC Beaufort. He's hit 361 there. So definitely a guy who you want on your team, can provide a spark on offense. Not that they need more offense. I mean, Mebane is back. Braden Smith and Gabe Worth are back. They each hit 356. So it's very, very just surprising to see that rise. And we're thinking, you know what? Actually, we think Georgia College is definitely a team to beat. And speaking of team to beat, a team that Georgia College did beat a season ago in the regional, or excuse me, not 100% sure if they did, but a team that they played in their regional. We got a number 13, and that's North Greenville.
Yeah, North Greenville baseball. I mean, that they are, you know, as good as it gets in D2 baseball. There's a lot of really good programs that are known just to have consistent success, and that is certainly what North Greenville has had. And you're right, they did lose to Georgia College in that Southeast Regional last year, but for North Greenville, they're going to continue to be an impressive team. They were the Conference Carolinas regular season champions last year, had so much momentum, and they won 41 ball games. They get to host the regional, but they ended the year in a way they probably didn't want to with all the big guys they had. Pat Monteith, David Lewis, and both those guys are gone now. So it's going to be a little bit of a different look, at least toward the top of that order. But they do get some key pieces back. Three different guys who hit above 300 return to this team: Thomas Powell, Landon Shaw, and Bryce Roddy, and then Jake Monroe as well on the mound. But they also lose some just instrumental D2 guys. I mean, Pat Monteith, David Lewis, obviously the transfer for Lewis, and then Reese Fields, who won more ball games than anybody in Division II history. So there's a lot of losses, but just the program in general of North Greenville is something to look at, and they do get some key guys back for a team that was so good in the regular season, just had a tough postseason run when they hosted the regional.
Absolutely. I mean, you also lose bullpen-wise Nate Roof and Dawson Taylor, but you bring back a guy like Matthew Taubensee, who struck out nearly 30% of batters and had a 2.12 ERA in 34 relief innings. You also have Caden Roach, who had a 26% strikeout rate in almost 28 innings with a 3.58 ERA. Not to mention some of the guys that grabbed from the portal. First, we have an outfielder in Peyton Howard, who presumably will be the Pat Monteith 2.0 for the Crusaders there in Tigerville. As in 131 plate appearances, Campbell, he hit 321, 5 home runs, 24 RBI, and 14 stolen bases. You also grab another outfielder in Gideon Antle, who at Ohio hit 350 with 10 home runs and 48 driven in with an OPS of exactly 1,000. And then lastly, on the junior college side, you bring in a guy by the name of Rocco Bresniak, a junior college transfer from Brookdale Community College. You want to hear this, Will? In 199 at-bats last season, he hit 568 with a 925 slugging. He had 23 doubles, 12 home runs. He stole 39 bases. He's definitely going to be an impact player for this North Greenville team going into 2025. And also, not to mention, they bring a guy by the name of Bennett Romer, who was at Newberry for the past 2 seasons. Didn't pitch as much last year, but in 2023, he went 9-0 with a 3.14 ERA in 77 and a third innings. He was a first-team All-SAC selection there in 2023. So, again, with Landon Powell and the pedigree of North Greenville, they're a top 25 team in our eyes, and they will continue, seems like, to have success early on in the season. As now we go from number 13 to number 12, and we'll enter another PSAC team, and that is the Westchester Golden Rams.
Yeah, I was getting excited. You're talking about all the guys North Greenville lost. I was, and then you're talking about all the guys they got, and oh my gosh, and they reloaded certainly, and that's the reason why. But as we do, we move on. 12th ranked team, Westchester. They were good, man. They were really good last year. 43 wins, and they get almost everybody back on the mound. I mean, it's going to be tough. They get 2 of their weekend guys back, and Julian Costa and Nick Noga, and they're going to be a big-time 1-2 punch. They obviously did lose a huge bat in Anthony Bocchio, who hit 550 or whatever he hit, 400 last year. One of the best hitters in the country for average, but they are certainly a force to be reckoned with on the hill. They bring back so much on the mound, and Westchester's been a really consistent team. They go to the PSAC tournament, win it last year, and they're a host in the Atlantic Regional.
Yeah, and they certainly are a very good candidate here in our top 25. Again, not to mention Julian Costa, Nick Noga at the top. You have Avery Spencer, Sean Stestowicki, 2 guys who hit above 340 there for the Golden Rams. And you bring in a guy by the name of Chase Conklin from Richmond a year ago, who struggled a bit in 2024, but in 2023 for the Spiders, he did hit 333 on the season. Definitely an impact bat to hopefully help Westchester win more ball games. And speaking of winning ball games, we're going to go back to that Southeast Regional with those three teams, and we're going to talk about the one of the three teams, and that is UNC Pembroke at number 11.
UNC Pembroke over the last few years has put up some record-breaking type offensive numbers, but the reason why we're so high on them this year, we know their offense is going to be great, and obviously they have some key candidates that are back. They do lose a good amount. Blake Hinson, a guy they're going to look at a lot, who hit a couple of bombs last year, drove in 35. Will Hood, another guy on this team. However, they get over 70% of their arms back. Will Harris, really good arm. Jonathan Jacobs, a really good arm. So those two guys, right-handers in the starting rotation, expected to do a lot of good things for this group. I mean, all in all, they only lost 8 starts on the mound from last year. So they have a lot to like. Consistency from last season, experience from last season when they were so good, and they win the Conference Carolinas Tournament Championship and go to the Southeast Regional. So that's something for UNC Pembroke. I think that we're going to continue to talk about them as one of the best teams in all of Division II baseball.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, Jonathan Jacobs definitely at the top in terms of quality of pitcher in the Conference Carolinas. Will Harris, H.L. Smith, Jacob Smith. But then another guy that's kind of sneaky, pitched really well towards the end of the year. It's Casey McCauley, 3.69 ERA, 21% strikeout rate. A guy who only threw 31 and two-thirds innings, but definitely a guy who might be doing well again that last year. 43-14 last year, 19-11 in conference, but they did win the Conference Carolina tournament. They were in that gauntlet of a Southeast Regional. Still felt like they played well. Oh, and they added Ramses Cordova from Bethune-Cookman in for that infield, but they also added a second team or all-SAC third team relief pitcher in South Willis, who was at Tusculum a year ago with a 3.75 ERA, 20 appearances, 2 starts, 15 and a third innings. So you also bolster that bullpen, something that's definitely needed there in the Conference Carolinas. As now we reach our top 10 teams here for the D2
Ooh.
baseball preseason top 25. And we'll start off number 10, a team that made it all the way to Cary. Nobody expected them to finish top 3 overall. Not only that, they were picked third in their own division in the PSAC last year, but head coach Steve Klein rose above those expectations and took his team all the way to Cary, finishing third there in the World Series. So IUP at number 10.
Finishing third and getting to the World Series. And for Steve Klein, third-year head coach, I mean, the year before he takes over, they win 2 ball games. He's come in and just completely revived this program. He's turned it around, and they are a team to be reckoned with. They get about 75% of their pitching back. Steve Klein's specialty, this team throws a ton of strikes, and they have experience on the mound. Derek Shields is somebody who starts that conversation along with Jake Black. And then when you get Ricardo Aponte back, who's such a key clutch bat for them, who hit 320 last year, it's just a lot to like with this group. I mean, they get a lot of their nucleus back from a team that went to the College World Series a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, and on the bullpen side, you bring back Jimmy Tooley, a great left-handed pitcher for this Crimson Hawk team, as well as Bryce Devon, now a freshman. He did have an 8.25 ERA, but he threw a lot of important innings for the Crimson Hawks a year ago. But not only mention that, but that 41-18 record, 21-9 in conference play, making that World Series trip, beating Seton Hill. You also got to bring some bats back. And yeah, like you mentioned, Aponte, David Kessler, who had a clutch home run, Ashawn Owens at the top of the lineup. But Steve Klein was looking for some pop, and he found 2 guys with pop, both in Mitchell Grosh and Mike Huber. Mitchell Grosh, a second team all PSAC member of then Division II, now Division I Mercyhurst, who hit 396, 6 home runs, 37 driven in, had an OPS over 1,000 there, as well as a second baseman designated hitter and third baseman, and not to mention first team all Atlantic region from the MEC and West Virginia State, Mike Huber, who hit 400 there for West Virginia State. 18 home runs, 17 doubles, 62 driven in, and OPS over 1,300. So IUP is definitely looking to repeat what they did last year, and that helps with bringing in that pop like Mike Huber.
Oh yeah, Huber was a beast. He really was. Let's continue this top 10.
As we go to number 9, and we go the NSIC, a team that, again, has a pedigree ever since they won the national championship back in 2018, and that is Augustana.
And they have a Huber too, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they have a Huber that runs the program, and Tim Huber.
Yes, they do. And Tim has just done a great job building this program up. I mean, they've gone to the NCAA tournament 8 times. They go in 2021, they go in 2019, they go in 2022, they go in 23, they go in 24. I mean, they've won 4 tournament championships under his direction, including one last year. And this is a group that you should really like. I mean, in the NSIC, they won 47 ball games last year, and for one of the best pitching staffs overall, they bring back 77% of a pitching staff that was one of the best in the country last year. That led them to the regular season and conference tournament championship. That got them to the Central Regional. Ashton Mychek is back. J.D. Hennon is back. I mean, they've got some really big arms back. Obviously, you lose Caleb Sari, who is a key cog in your rotation. And then offensively, you get back maybe the early favorite for D2 Player of the Year in Jack Hines, an All-American who hit .445 last year. Now, you don't get Dre Dirksen anymore. He left this squad, but, man, they got a lot to like on both sides. And even with it not having a ton of production back, when you have Jack Hines back, he's going to be able to lead this offense.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, 445. Absolutely unbelievable. 21 home runs, 89 driven in. This team that won both the NSIC regular season and conference championship. You have Mychek, you have Mariano Gomez, J.D. Hennon, your 3-headed monster of rotation arms, as well as you got Ethan Cole coming out of the bullpen, Riley Rolfshattle, excuse me if I butcher your name, Will Henry, guys who threw 20 or more innings with an ERA under 3. Definitely a team still that is going to play at such a high level. Jason Axelberg, another guy who hit .333. But on the transfer side, they brought in a guy from Iowa Central Community College by the name of Troy Berg. And, well, what did he do there? Well, he hit 18 doubles, 6 triples, 9 home runs, 48 driven in, 28 stolen bases, and he hit .400 on the season and 190 at-bats for Iowa Central Community College. Definitely a guy that will provide some more spark there for the Vikings at number 9, as they are also the preseason favorites for the NSIC as that poll came out.
Yeah.
As now we go to our final 8 teams, and we'll start at number 8, and we'll go to a place that both Will and I are familiar with, and a team that we are familiar with, and that is the UIndy Greyhounds at number 8.
It's hard to ignore what they've done over the last couple of years. A lot of credit to what's been going on in Indianapolis. Midwest region champs, back-to-back trips to the College World Series. They win 41 ball games a season ago, and I think the left side of the infield you have to think is one of the best in the country, with Cole Hampton and then Easton Good, of course. I mean, that the shortstop and third base position are settled for this team. They've got a ton of seniors in this lineup that are really good. Nick Lukac is a senior who had a lot of appearances at the plate last year. They do return about 36% of their offense, but 70% nearly of the pitching. Diego Cardenas obviously was their frontline guy. He's back. Carter Nowak is back. Dawson Gabe They all threw a lot of innings for this team last year. They do lose a guy who they threw, it felt like, every game in E.J. White, and obviously Drew Donaldson at the plate, who we talked about a lot for a few seasons. But this group has a lot back. They've got a ton coming to this program, and I haven't even got to their transfers yet. I'll let Robert take that away because they got some big guys in the portal as well.
They do. They do. Had the pleasure of seeing them in the fall, and man, they got a guy who can definitely hit, and that's a guy by the name of Austin Bodie, who has transferred from two different prominent Power Four conferences. In 2022, he was with Louisville. He hit 294 there. In 2024, last year, he was with Indiana and hit 273 with a 515 OBP. And man, it's a guy who will definitely mash for the Greyhounds in 2025. And also, not to mention the catcher Chase Mason from Carl Sandburg College, as in last year he hit 346 there, 11 doubles. He had 25 driven in, 471 OBP. He also threw out nearly 30% of his runners that he were trying to steal on him. So a lot of retooling, and like you said, Will, just a team we cannot ignore with their back-to-back Midwest championships and appearances there in Cary, North Carolina, as another team we just cannot ignore from pedigree and just consistently winning year in and year out. That's the Colorado Mesa Mavericks at number 7.
Yeah, Colorado Mesa, they win 38 games last year, win the RMAC regular season, win the RMAC tournament. So it puts them in a position to host in the South Central Regional. It just feels like if you go back the last half decade, it's them and Angelo in that South Central Regional on a collision course pretty much. However, for Colorado Mesa, and I know that's shifted up a little bit here and there. However, for Colorado Mesa, the program that they've built and the dominance that they've had in the RMAC, it's come from offense. And the offense, well, 65% of it's back, including All-American Colby Felix, who hit 414 a season ago. But out of all the top 25 teams we considered, they returned the most pitching in the country as well, at 95% of their pitching is back, and you need it in the RMAC, and they have it. Liam Hohenstein looks for a bounce back here. Cole Seward is back. I mean, Caleb Rudder is back. They literally lost like 20 innings maybe on they lose nothing. They have a whole senior staff, and they've got some good bats as well. So this is a group to be reckoned with, and I don't think anybody's going to be signing up to play Colorado Mesa this season.
Absolutely not. Like you said, Cole Seward at the top of the rotation. Hohenstein, you expect him to have a bounce back year of what he did his freshman season, an 8.22 ERA, not exactly, perfect last year, but that's kind of the slope that you play in the RMAC, right? Because the ball flies there no matter where you play. And being able to have just the amount of talent that Colorado Mesa has brought back speaks volumes. Sure, you lose Rob Sherrar, an All-American. You lose Jonathan Gonzalez, who hit 409. But a lot of guys are still key contributors. And a lot of guys just didn't play as much last year, but were performing in their limited play appearances. Christos Stefanos hit 371, just 147 plate appearances. Paul Schoenfeld, 141 plate appearances, hit 412. So a lot of these guys will be getting more opportunities. TJ Ream hit 368 in just 117 plate appearances. So again, with the RMAC and Chris Hanks and how well that Colorado Mesa has just done year in, year out, it is hard to ignore them as one of the top teams in the country. And another team that is hard to ignore, because no matter what, it seems like you'll just see their name penciled in into Cary, North Carolina. That's the number 6 team. That is Southern New Hampshire.
Well, it has been penciled in each of the last 4 years. They certainly are the kings of the East region. And for Southern New Hampshire, 37 wins last year, dominate the NE10. They go to the East Regional, their 4th straight appearance. I mean, not many teams can say that. And so you look at this group and you get back your entire weekend rotation, Austin Trumpor, Parker Lendrum, Frankie DeMauro, they're all back for this team. 85% of a pitching staff returns for a team that was young last year under a first-year head coach, but they have the same results. They get to the College World Series once again, and Jorge Burgos as well, back with the bat in his hands. He's a huge bat for this group, hitting 333 a season ago. So this is a really good group.
Really good group, and another guy that's you expect to take the next step forward is Jake Reisdorf. Hit 261 on 195 plate appearances. But if you were watching last year, he was essentially just the first guy out of the bullpen or the guy that closes out the games for the Penmen last year. So you expect his role to increase, maybe see a spot in the rotation, or maybe just continue to be that key bullpen piece for the Penmen. But in terms of guys that they kind of bring in John Carlos Colon from Delaware State, who a year ago hit 328 with a 443 OBP, also stole 21 bags, a guy that's definitely looking to replace Harry Vargas-Segura at the top of that lineup, as well as you bring in a guy who was the second team Great Northwest selection for a pitcher from Mitchell College, Cameron Varney, who went 5-1 with a 2.93 ERA over 70 innings in Division III a year ago. A team, like we said, will last 4 years they've been to Cary, and it looks like they're the early favorites there in the Reese region. So you cannot think differently of them. And another team we can't think differently of, especially in recent years, how this head coach has just changed his program around, and that's Point Loma and Justin James.
Oh, Justin James has this group really going at a high level right now. And Point Loma, they have, first of all, you just see in the picture, they've got just one of the best atmospheres or just best places to play in the country with the backdrop there at Point Loma. But they win 46 games last year. They dominate the Pac West. It's going to be interesting to see if they can continue that dominance as the Pac West expands and tries to get more competitive. However, they win the regular season. They win the tournament out in the Pac West, which is becoming a better and better league. They win the West region. They go to Cary, North Carolina, and they're a group that there's a lot to be excited about with Jake Entrikin coming back to this team and Ray Cebulski as well. Two key guys on either side of the ball. Entrikin, the catcher, one of the better catchers in America, and then Cebulski, somebody who had 13 starts last year to help out this rotation. But it is going to be a different group. They don't have Scott Anderson anymore, somebody who was a key cog for this team. They don't have Dylan Miller anymore, who made 17 starts, or Austin Coleman, or James Sashin, who led the country in saves. However, with how good Point Loma's been and what Coach James has done consistently, this is a top 5 team in the country in our estimation right now.
Absolutely. And what Coach James has done year in and year out in the transfer portal to just retool this team has been unbelievable too. He brings in a guy from Cal State San Marcos in Luke Reese, who was a first-team All-CCAA, first-team All-West region, as a year ago he hit 354 with an OPS over 1,000, a dozen home runs, 48 driven in. He'll be a key piece of the team, as well as you go down into the Division III level and grab Noah Meffert, who hit for George Fox in 144 at-bats, 410 with 5 home runs, 35 driven in, 10 triples, a guy who can fly, 13 stolen bases as well. So a guy who was first-team All-Northwest Conference in Division III. And then you bring a guy from D2 Independent Bluefield State in Chris Larkin, who hit 415 for Bluefield State, as well as he travels cross-country from West Virginia to California, even though he was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. So not very far for him in terms of hometown compared to West Virginia. But those impact guys, and that's not to mention 2 arms that they got as well. Bobby Brown from Biola, he had a 4.97 ERA, but a 3.21 in 2023. He was second-team All-Pac West, as well as Colin Driscoll, who had a 3.17 ERA in 71 innings from St. Martin. So they always do a great job of grabbing from the portal and just retooling and reloading for the next season. As now we go to teams that we go to the Final Four, and a team that year in and year out represents Division II baseball at such a great level, and that's the Central Missouri Mules.
Absolutely. It starts with Chase Heath here. Such a great player. He's back for this team. 16 bombs last year. Jacob Steele's back. And I think for this team, I mean, you have them at number 4. They're a candidate every year to be number 1, number 2. I mean, they like you said, they have represented Division II baseball at as a high a level as any program in America over the last couple decades. It is going to be interesting to see how they can respond or at least follow up what they did in 2024 when they approached hitting the most home runs ever hit in a single season in Division II baseball history. But they do get a couple of key guys back on offense, all in all, just 36%. But 82% of their pitching is back. It starts and ends with Connor Wolf. It's going to be fun to see Connor Wolf against Cole Gaiman battle it out for MIAA Pitcher of the Year once again this season. And Connor Wolf back in action. Really, really strong arm for a team that won 52 ball games last year, the MIAA regular season. And they go to the Central region and make it to Cary, North Carolina, as they do quite a bit.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's a lot to replace on offense. You lose Brandon Van Bruggen, who hit 21 home runs, Max Holy, Carter Young, Jack Shark, Cole Moore, Josh Patrick, but not worried about how Central Missouri and how they approach things as well. Connor Wolf, unbeaten last year, 12-0. So you see him back. But the other key piece of Central Missouri is they only lose 3 starts from a year ago. So all but their 62 games, they lose all but 3 starts of those 62 games for a year ago as head coach Kyle Crooks looks to make an impact once again there in the MIAA and the Central region. Plus, you bring in a couple of great transfers. First, we start off with David Johnson from Wichita State. In 229 at-bats, he hit 297 with an OBP of 411. So looks to generate more pop. 8 home runs as well. Looks to generate some pop there. You bring in a left-handed arm and Cody Bruss from Southeast Community College. In 16 appearances, 9 starts, almost 50 innings. He had a 2.92 ERA and 57 strikeouts. A guy that fits that Missouri mold, that Central Missouri mold. Also, you bring Evan O'Toole from Oklahoma State, 2 years where he pitched in relief for Oklahoma State, had an ERA around 5 a year ago, but 34 strikeouts in 29 and a third innings. And then lastly, you bring in Nick Beach, a utility from St. Charles Community College. He hit 322 with 1,000 OPS, and he had 46 career stolen bases at St. Charles Community College. Definitely the type of player that fits that power speed combo that Central Missouri does a great job of coveting.
Oh, yeah, they've got a lot. And I think that just with the program recognition as well, you're going to expect them to be a really good team. Just talked about good guys they got and good guys they have back. But let's go on to number 3. Oh,
Number
yes.
3, we go to the SAC and we go to Catawba, the number 3 team in the country. Will kick us off with Catawba.
Well, I will tell you that this is a team that won 46 games last year. Okay. 24 wins in conference play. They go to the Southeast region and they win it. And they go to Cary. And they come into this year after all those recognitions, 46 wins, go to Cary. 87% of their pitching is back from last year. And some key names at that. Austin Fine, who made 17 starts last year, is back. Payne Stolzworth, who made 17 starts last year, is back. Hayden Simerson, who made 8 starts last year, who I would expect to be in the rotation this year, is back. And so you get 3 guys back on this team who are power, big time, all conference level arms for this group, and 87% of the total pitching for a pitching staff that was as good as any in the country last year. And then on the offensive end, Sam Hunter, Dylan Driver, Cole Hales. I mean, this is a team that you can get really excited about. They didn't lose much. And I think Hayden Simerson, after what he did as a freshman, I would fully expect him to be lights out on the weekends this year.
Absolutely. I mean, especially at the top, you have bring back two guys with 100 plus innings and Fine and Stolesworth, guys who can really get it done. Offensively, you bring back Sam Hunter, who hit 355, Dylan Driver, who hit 370, Cole Hales, who hit 316. Guys who will provide spark on that offense. Plus, you bring in a guy like Jake Blevins from D3 Pfeiffer, who had 55 strikeouts and 15 and a third innings with 8 starts. Braden Major from Bluefield State. He had a 3-1 record with a 5 ERA over 30 and a third innings. Plus, you bring in two guys maybe a little bit unproven, but you bring a guy like Nathan Chrisman from East Carolina, an infielder, and Hunter Atkins from UNC Greensboro, a utility man. Two guys that can provide a lot of spark there for Catawba as they look to defend their regular season sack title from last year, and Jim Gant will have that team ready.
He will. He's a great coach, and they defend their home field as good as anyone. But
They
drum roll.
they sure do. But drum roll is if you haven't figured it out now and you understand Division II baseball, you probably have a good bet of who number two and number one is. But without further ado, the number two team, the Angelo State Rams.
Yeah, Angelo State's pretty good. I said earlier when you talk about Southern New Hampshire, who can go to carry this often? Who can go to carry this often? Well, Angelo State can. Angelo State was the national runner-up last year, getting to the national championship game for a second consecutive season. Over 60% of their pitching back, over 60% of their offense back, 65 all in all for their total team, and some big-time guys, Justin Harris, Tayton Treadway, Weston Velasic, but I'm really excited about Jacob Guerrero as well, who hit 361 last year. Not to mention Dax Daffy, who had pretty much strikeout every single time he stepped on the mound. And Alicia Gutierrez, Caleb Hewerts. This is a team that is loaded, and I haven't even got to the transfers Kevin Brooks got either. So this is a team that is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
A lot of fun to watch. And another guy that we'll mention is Austin Beck, who only had 38 player appearances, got set down due to injury, but he was a 2023 All-American. So you bring him back as
Yeah.
well, too. So it brings an opportunity there. But you go to the transfer portal, you get Ryan Free from Texas Tech, who had a 5.31 ERA career over 100 innings for the Red Raiders. A guy who can definitely get it done more out of the bullpen. It started last year, so we'll see what Kevin Brooks does there as well. Not to mention, you also bring in Nick Wilson from Dallas Baptist, a right-handed pitcher, a guy who just a season ago, went 6-3 with a 5.44 ERA for Dallas Baptist. So pretty impressive there, and two arms that will definitely help Angelo State as now they look to try to make a third straight national title game appearance, and hopefully for their sake that they repeat what they did in 2023 and win the thing.
And the team that did win the thing in 2024 is the team that is last on this list. And it's pretty clear. Where do we start with Tampa, Robert? They had a great year last year. They bring a ton of guys back. They bring in a couple of Power 4 guys who played a lot. Where do we start with Tampa?
Wherever you want to start, this is just unbelievable what Joe Urso has done and the roster that they have brought into. Sure, you lose a guy like EJ Cumbo. When you talk about historical Division II baseball players, EJ Cumbo exemplifies that. You lose a guy like JP Gates, who had a ERA under 1 at .42 and also hit 423. But it's not like they can't retool. Some guys they're bringing back. Braden Woodburn, who hit 303. Nico Saladino, 290. Mike Valdez, who hit 349. Santiago Garavito hit 305 with a dozen home runs. But on the pitching side, you bring back a pitcher who was perfect the entire year. Skylar Gonzalez, who went 16-0 over 100 innings, 2.46 ERA. You bring in a guy like Jake Stipp, who had a 3.14 ERA over 66 innings. Eli Thurman had a 4.19 out of the bullpen. So much there for the Spartans, as well as just the amount of guys that they were able to bring in. You bring in Alberto Ozuna from North Carolina, He ran
Yeah.
out of Division I eligibility. He was a 2023 D1 baseball preseason All-American. Lenny Ashby from Kansas, a guy who was second team All-Mountain West in 2023 with New Mexico. And JD Urso returns, a guy who was first team All South region as well. And that's not even mentioning all the other transfers that they have, like Kevin Carstetter, Logan Wash, amongst others, to make this team be the number one team to start the season in Division II baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. And I think they are the number one team, but it is pretty clear why. And you just mentioned when you get the National Pitcher of the Year back, National Coach of the Year back, Coach's son comes back as well, who was an all-region caliber player after a year at D1. But Woodburn and Garavito, really excited about them. But I know he hasn't played Division II baseball yet, but I'm really excited to see what Alberto Ozuna can do because, yeah, he hit quite a bit of home runs in his career as a Tar Heel. So I think people are going to realize pretty quick the type of player he is. When you hit 45 home runs playing in the ACC, you're a pretty good ball player, and that's what the Sunshine State Conference will have to deal with.
Absolutely, and indeed it is. I mean, oh man, that's going to be no. When you mention, no one wants to play Colorado baseball. Nobody wants to play
No one.
Tampa. Nobody, but every team will be ready to play as they'll be the team with their target on their back throughout the 2025 season. Still getting used to saying 2025, Will, but in no particular order we'll go to, or excuse me, in alphabetical order, we'll go to teams that we did receiving votes or consideration for our top 25. And we'll go with Central Oklahoma in the MIAA, Charleston coming off a 44-win season in the MEC, Embry-Riddle in that super regional with Tampa in the Sunshine State, Harding, who had a regional appearance, also shared a regular season title in the GAC, Lander, who won the regular season in Peach Belt, but didn't get into the postseason with 38 wins. Lee in the Gulf South, who won the regular season title there. Maryville, who won the GLVC conference tournament, won 40 games. Minnesota State, who won 37 games in the NSIC. Malloy, who went over 40 games and represented the East Coast Conference. Mount Olive in the Conference Carolinas won 39 games, but a relatively new team. Regis in the RMAC returns quite a bit of their team, winning 32 games. Saginaw Valley, who won the GLIAC regular season title in over 40 games. St. Leo won 38 games a year ago with a new coaching staff and a relatively new team. San Francisco State, who won 34 games, but returns quite a bit of their team. And lastly, West Florida, who won the Gulf South to get into the regional and won 39 games.
That is a great list. So there's your top 25. Those are our teams that received consideration. We hope you enjoyed this, but we also want to say before we go, again, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this wherever it is, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, on our website, on our social media platforms. But one thing that we want to preview as we go back through this top 25 is that coming up soon, we're going to release our All-American teams. And really excited about dropping this. And for Patreon members, you're going to be able to get to see that maybe a little bit early, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's a lot of talk about receiving consideration. There's a lot of considerations coming there. And some of the players that we mentioned today probably going to be on that list because if you're a good player on one of the best teams in the country, but we won't get into too much of that. We'll tie a bow on this. And Robert, we say so long for everybody watching this one. Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts here. Thanks again for everyone. If you want to support us and continue this kind of work to bring to you and cover Division II baseball, our link is right there for those who are watching. Otherwise, it's patreon.com/DIVII baseball. Support us. Plus, you get goodies in there. You get early access to all of our interviews. You get early access to other things. We're going to be dropping something really cool soon that involves our fans, and it's season long, so it makes it very interesting. Plus, we also have for certain tiers, we have our top 25 debates. So every week we'll record ourselves, going over the next week's top 25, and you'll be able to see that as well. So thank you again for everyone that has supported us. If you don't need to support us on Patreon, but please, follow us on all socials, DIVII Baseball, as well as check out our website, diviibaseball.com.